Hi and welcome. In this video, we are going to discuss about the git ignore file. Now, this is one of the most important concepts in Git. In real life, we work on a project in an integrated development environment, or IDE for short. When we import any project in IDE, then the IDE creates its own configuration files to manage a project on our machine. But we do not want to add these files in our Git repository as every developer has their own preference of IDE. Hence, my IDE configuration files are of no use to my colleague as he or she may use some other IDE. So, to skip these files from getting saved in version history, we need to ignore them from Git repository. Let us take an example of Eclipse IDE that I am using for this demo. Now, when I include my project in it, then Eclipse will generate its own configuration files for its own reference. As you can see, that Eclipse have generated a .project file for its own project management. If I check the status of the repository, then I will see Git telling about an untracked .project file. To ignore it, we need to create a .git ignore file. I will open my IDE and the .git ignore file in it. Now to ignore any file or directory from version tracking, we just have to specify the file name or directory name in this ignore file. After saving it, I will go to my git bash and check the status. And this time, the .project file have been removed from the status. But now Git is telling about an untracked .git ignore file. We have to commit this file in our version as the final step. Note that this git ignore file is git specific file for its own reference. So please do not ignore this file and please commit it. The .git ignore file support regular expressions as well. If I create a folder to be ignored and create a file inside it, then this folder will come up in the repository status. To ignore this folder, I will give its name in the .git ignore file. This will ignore the folder and all the files in it. If there was one more file, not to be ignored.txt, well, I'm going fancy with the names, inside the folder, which we do not want to ignore, then in the git ignore file, we will specify the text file after the folder name. In this way, Git will only ignore this test.txt file. Let us verify that. And as we can see that the folder to be ignored is coming in the status. Now, how do we know what all files are getting added and what all files are getting ignored? This I will show you in a moment, but before that, let me delete the newly created file. This time, I will create a log file with the name sumlog.log and a text file to be ignored.txt. And in this scenario, we want to ignore all the txt files and just want to keep log files in the repository version. This time, we will use a regular expression. We will replace test.txt with asterisk.txt. This will ignore all the text files and only the text files inside the to be ignored folder. To check what all files are going to be added in the version history, we need to stage the changes first. Now if you try to see the differences from the staging area, then the result will show two new files that were added. One was gitignore file and the changes inside it, and the other file was sumlog.log file inside the to be ignored folder, and none of the txt files inside the to be ignored folders were added.